Welcome back to my channel. My name is Tyler, and this is episode 1 of a mini-series on how to get into the hemp industry. We'll be discussing how to make feminized seed grown in the ground. You can do it in containers, but I'm trying to help you save some costs. So containers are just another cost, so we'll cut that out and go straight into the ground. So let's jump right into it. I've broken this topic into 6 sections, and I'll dive deeper into each section. Here's an overview of what I'll discuss. Number 1, know before you grow is all the research you should do before getting into this segment of the industry. Figure out if this is something you would be interested in doing and whether you have the time and other resources to do it. Number 2, grow your plants. This is the fun part, but it's also the make or break part, and every plant counts, especially when you're starting. Number 3, harvest, bag, and store. It's time to harvest the fruit of your labors and find out what all of your effort over the past 3 to 4 months of growing produced. If you did it right, you can make a profit. If not, then time to go back to the drawing board with all of your lessons learned. Number 4, sell your seeds. This may be the hardest part as the market has started to become saturated. Picking a unique strain of seeds can demand a higher price, but the number of potential interested customers could also potentially be lower. Strike the right balance and you could have a sustainable model, but don't be afraid to pivot to a different strain of seed if you need to. Number 5, costs. Building a company is not free in most industries, and the hemp industry is no exception. Calculate your expected costs up front to make sure you understand your fixed and variable expenses, your recurring and non-recurring expenses, and your break even. Last but not least, I've got some disclaimers at the very end, a little bit of a teaser. We'll get to that. Stick all the way through. Know before you grow. Like any business, you should do your due diligence before jumping in. Do some independent research, and then bounce what you learn off of some people that are in the industry to validate what you've learned, or give you some ideas about other areas to further research. Researching is key before spending money. If you decide not to jump into growing and selling seed because your research has dissuaded you, then all you lost was time, and not your hard-earned money. The information I'm providing is based on Virginia laws and regulations. Each state may be different, so please don't take this as a one-size-fits-all approach to every state. In Virginia, you'll need a hemp grower license and a seed seller license. You'll apply for both of them through the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, or VDAC's, website. I've included a link to their site in the comments section. You need to figure out how big your initial operation is going to be. I'd recommend starting small, such as in your backyard. You don't need to have a farm to grow, but you do need a space that gets full sun for at least 8 hours a day, and if you can get up to 16 hours of sun during the vegetation period, then even better. Identify the area you plan on growing, and then make 3 or 4 sun observations of that area per day. Once in the morning, once in the early afternoon, once in the late afternoon, and once in the evening. You want to identify a spot in your yard that gets full sun at all 4 times of those observations, or as close to it as possible to maximize your direct sun time. Are there trees, bushes, or some other vegetation blocking sun for a part of that day? Are they on your property? Is cutting them down or trimming them back an option? Would cutting them down or trimming them back give you more sun in that spot? Make your observations and then make a decision. I cannot stress enough how absolutely critical the sun is for your success. Once you've figured out how much space you're going to dedicate to growing and how much sun it gets, it's time to test your soil. I'd highly recommend sending a soil sample to your local agriculture extension. In Virginia, I send my soil samples to Virginia Tech. You can find a soil sample kit at the library. It's basically just a box that you fill with dirt that includes instructions on how to collect the sample and what to do with it after you've collected it. It took about 7 days for me to get the results back in an email. The report included organic and inorganic materials, existing nutrients in the soil, and recommendations for what nutrients and in what quantities to add to the soil based on what you told Virginia Tech you are growing. The right starting soil is absolutely key to a good start. So, you know you're going to plant based on your sun assessment and soil report. Now time to figure out how to water it. Where's the nearest water source and how are you going to get the water to your plants? If your operation is small enough, a watering can will probably do the trick. If this is your first time growing, your operation should be small enough for a watering can. Did I mention to start small? Yeah, I didn't change my mind on that. Start small, do yourself a favor. Last but not least, pests, bugs, mold, animals, small children, people you live with that have gardening black thumbs of death. There are limited pesticides you can use, especially on people, but the list is growing for the hemp industry as additional research is being done. Check out your local extension office and the USDA website for the most up-to-date list of pesticides. Your best bet is to make sure you start with clean, well-draining soil in a fenced-off and protected area, and you minimize the number of people that are tending to your plants. The fewer people that tend to your plants, the less chance of over or under watering and over or under fertilizing. It's time to grow. All the research you've done led to this glorious day. You know where you're going to plant, what fertilizer and soil amendments you're going to add to your soil, how you're going to water it, and how you're going to control the pests. Let's pop those seeds. I won't spend much time on how to germinate your seeds. You can refer to my other video that walks through that entire process. Just suffice to say, germinating them in a wet paper towel is the best and fastest way of determining viability, so you don't spend time and energy figuring out if you should wait for a sprout to pop up in that spot in the ground or not. After you've planted your germinated seeds in a seed tray or other small container, pro tip, save up some yogurt containers for a few months and drill holes in the bottom. Keep the soil moist. Make sure the sprouts get some light and keep them in 65 to 75 degree conditions until a second node has developed, and then start hardening them off by leaving them outside for a few hours a day. Before you transfer your sprouts to the ground, make sure you've amended your soil with fertilizer and anything else that was recommended in the soil report. Once the ground temperature is around 50 degrees Fahrenheit and you are past the last frost of the year, you can plant your sprouts in the ground. If you want a direct sow instead of germinating seeds indoors, these are the air temperature and ground conditions you've been waiting for. Once you're in the ground, it's your job to keep them alive. The larger they get, the more resilient they become, and the harder it is to kill them. But don't take that as a challenge to try to kill them. The best results come from optimal care. Develop a schedule that includes the following: watering, fertilizing, weeding, pest control, and pruning. In general, you should keep track of the weather so you can plan your watering schedule. As the weather gets hotter, you'll need to water more. If you're expecting windy conditions for several days, you'll also need to water more. Adding a layer of mulch will help cut down on watering and weeding. Write down the schedule and record what you did on that day, how much fertilizer you added, how much water you gave them, and what pest control you applied. Somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks from sprouting, you should be able to determine the sex of the plant. The big difference and the easiest thing to look for between a male and a female plant is a pollen sac. Males have pollen sacs. Female plants do not. You need to remove the male plants before the pollen sacs open up, or you'll potentially have ruined the entire crop. These will be sad days and dark times, but you can prevent them by being vigilant. Once you've culled the herd by removing the plants, you're in the clear, and it's time to start making sure that your female plants put their effort into making female seeds. Through the magic of colloidal silver, you can force a female plant to make seeds that have a 95% chance or greater of making another female plant. For about 2 weeks, you're going to spray colloidal silver at the nodes of the plant 1 or 2 times per day. You can buy the spray online at places like Amazon or eBay. You're looking for a spray that has at least 20 parts per million. You want to make sure you get good coverage of the node, so after you spray it, move the liquid around with a small paintbrush that you can get at the dollar store. When the plant develops flowers, you'll see pistils, which look like little white hairs. The little white hairs will turn into seed pouches, and that's how you know you did it correctly. When a female plant is not in the presence of a male plant, but it makes seeds. Female plants will only make seeds when they have been pollinated, and since there are no male plants around to pollinate them, the colloidal silver changes an enzyme in the female plant, telling it to go into survival mode and make seeds. These are your money makers. Now that you've identified your money makers, it's time to harvest, collect, bag, and store those bad babies. Around the end of month 3 or the beginning of month 4, it will be time to harvest your seeds. This can be a very tedious process if you don't have the right tools. Since you won't be doing anything with the flower, get them as dry as possible. You'll need space to hang the branches upside down in a dry, less than 60% humidity room, and cool, somewhere between 65 and 75 degrees, kind of environment. Alternatively, you can cut the flowers from the branches and lay them on a rack that provides airflow from the bottom and the top. Either way, the drier you get the flowers, the easier it will be to remove the seeds. You can test flower dryness by hand just by rubbing flowers between your fingers to see if it starts to fall apart, or you can get a wood moisture meter for about $20 on Amazon. I'd recommend holding off on getting the moisture meter as it's really only used to target a specific moisture level that you would need to sell a flower for smokable product or biomass for extraction. The finger method will suffice. The seed sacs are sticky, even after drying them out. You can either hand pick through the flowers to get each seed if you have infinite amounts of time, or you can don a pair of gloves, slide your hand down the stalk of the plant, knocking all the flower off as you go, and then thresh the flowers between your hands to separate the flower from the seeds. Once you've threshed the flower into a container, transfer the contents of that flower to a seed sifter and shake over a container to catch the seed. Once all the seed is out of the sifter, remove the flower and repeat until all the threshed flower has been separated from the seed. The second fun part, not so much, is figuring out how many seeds you harvested. You can hand count them if you want, or you can count the first 100, weigh them, and then extrapolate based on the total weight of all the seeds. The big guys have seed counters, but it all depends on how much you want to spend at the beginning. I'd say hold off on that expense until you figure out if you actually enjoyed the whole process and can see yourself as a seed seller or not before making the investment. The big guys also have equipment that will shake all of the seeds out, reducing their manual labor as well. Once you have all the seeds separate from the flower and they've been counted and or weighed, it's time to bag them and store them. If you're going to sell them in a fixed and known quantities, then you can bag them and be done with them. If you're going to sell them in variable quantities, it might be best to put them in a resealable plastic or glass container. Regardless of the container in which you store them prior to selling them, you'll want to keep them in a controlled environment. Ideally, they go into a cool and dry environment with no light. Some people put them in a refrigerator with a silica packet inside of the container to control for moisture. Other people put them in a pantry. Whatever you decide, just make sure it's a controlled environment. You didn't make it this far to ruin all of your hard work. And if you store them right, they can remain viable for about 2 years. And I've heard of some seeds remaining viable for up to 6 years that were kept in a refrigerator. Congratulations! You made it this far! It's time to sell those hard-earned seeds. Now that you know you can do it, and hopefully you like doing it, it's time to either market your skills or market your product. You may have an easier time selling seeds if you contract grow for seeds under an established company. Find several established operations that either sell feminized seed or use feminized seed and submit a proposal to them with the quantity, type, germination rate, and cost per seed or pound that you can produce. Be prepared to send them free samples of your seeds and consider it your marketing expense for your startup. Yes, I understand you put in all that hard work to give away your product for free, but it's a saturated market right now, and the first mover advantage is gone. If you decide you can do better selling on your own, then it's time to develop a prospective list of buyers. Attend hemp conventions. Join social media groups dedicated to growing hemp. Create a social media following. Find hemp farmers. Talk to different college and university agricultural programs that have hemp programs and hustle, hustle, hustle. It is not going to be easy, but if you have the will and determination, you can definitely do it. Look, at the end of the day, I'm a pretty frugal person, and I've discussed the least expensive way to get started and minimize your financial risk. But it won't be free, or a lot more people will be growing. Now, I'm sure you put some thought into it. You can probably trim some other expenses as well. Starter seeds will cost about $50. You can get less, but I'd start off with at least $50, knowing that some will not make it all the way. When you're calling around to different farmers during your research phase, ask them if they have some feminized seeds for sale. When in doubt, you can go to kush.com and just buy some there. But it'd kind of be nice to, support some local farmers as well and give them the first chance at your business. Talk about your expenses here. So licenses are going to cost about $300. Yeah. $250 for the hemp grower license and another $50 for the seed seller license. These prices are current as of 2020. The hemp grower license was $50 in 2019, so don't be surprised if the price for any license increases. The soil test is about $20 after shipping. If you're growing under a business license, then the test is free, but you'll still have to pay about $10 in shipping. Unless you're planting in perfect ground, you can expect to add fertilizer and something to amend the soil to make it drain better, especially if you have some of the infamous Virginia red clay. Plan on about $100 to $150 if you're going to grow in a 30 by 30 foot area. Again, the size and quality of your soil will dictate how much help it needs to create optimal growing conditions. Read the report from the extension, and if you need help interpreting it, Southern States is a great resource for face-to-face help. Also, if you're a veteran, you can get a 10% discount at Southern States. If you really want to trim back on fertilizer costs, see if there's a horse, alpaca, or chicken farm nearby that has some manure they are willing to let go of for free. Bring your own bags. They may not have them. And definitely bring like a plastic sheet to put down in the trunk of your car, because that's not pleasant. I'll just leave it at that. If you're going to mulch, try seedless straw if you can find it. Untreated mulch or wood chips also work. Call a few different tree services in your area. Oftentimes they're willing to give away some of their wood chips for free or at a discounted cost relative to the big box stores. If you decide you're going to buy untreated mulch, you can get it for about $5 to $10 per bag, depending on the size and type. Tools. Like any other trade or skill, the right tools can make your job significantly easier and more efficient. You'll need a hoe, $10 to $20 to help with weeding. A watering can, like $20. I prefer a 2-gallon watering can. It holds quite a bit of water, but it's not so heavy that you can't maintain control of it while you're watering. A seed sifter to separate the flour from the seed. Head over to Amazon and get a sifter for $30 that has multiple interchangeable sieve sizes. A container to go under the sifter. A pair of pruning shears, $20, something that can cut up to 1 inch in thickness. Trust me, these plants can get thick. All in, you should plan on around $500 to get started. Yes. One key ingredient, right? The magic sauce. To make this all work, you'll need colloidal silver. It runs anywhere between $10 to $30 depending on the brand, size, and parts per million. One last thing. This is my disclaimer, and this is specifically around seed. There's a thing as copyrighted seeds. There's also non-propagation agreements, as well as language saying this seed has to be made non-viable after you produce it. And what all that means basically is if you buy seed from a company that has one of those agreements, then legally you can't take that seed, grow it into more seed, and resell it. They have legal recourse for doing that. So just keep in mind when you're out buying your seed, look for those agreements. I'm not saying people don't do it. I'm sure it happens all the time, but I just want you to be careful and be safe out there and protect you from a legal standpoint as well. So with all that, happy growing. Thank you for joining me. When you have a chance, hit that like or subscribe button. It really helps me out. Have a great day.